Well, hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Streamline the Management of Your Fixed Assets in Dynamics GP. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute your line or submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We'll be answering questions throughout the presentation and following up afterwards to answer any additional questions. So at this point, Tammy, I believe we're ready to transition the presentation over to you.
Great, thanks, Cheryl. Good morning. It's still morning here in Northern California. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tammy Johnson, and I'm a solution architect with Socius, and we're going to be reviewing fixed assets today. We're going to start off talking about additions, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that because I think there's some confusion about what happens when you add an asset. We're going to talk about the different transactions that you process through fixed assets, retirements, transfers, of course, depreciation. We'll talk about GL posting, physical inventory, and then just a kind of a sampling of some of the reports that are available. Before we start jumping into details here, I just have a quick poll that I'd like to get out there for everyone. And so if you could just let me know how many of you that are on the call today are using fixed assets. That would help me kind of tailor this to my audience. Well, looks like people are still voting. We'll go ahead and keep going here. All right, looks like everybody's voted. Wow. Okay, so 55% no, 45% yes. That's pretty evenly split. I mean, it's not 50-50, but it's pretty darn close. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and let's get started then. Talking about fixed asset additions. Now, in Dynamics GP fixed assets, there are three ways that you can create an asset. The first one is through manual entry, and that's pretty self-explanatory. The second way is through accounts payable, and the third way is through purchasing. And so I just want to walk through each of these, maybe not so much the manual option, but the purchasing and accounts payable option. So I'm just going to open GP here. Now, I need to hide my poll. Cheryl, can you see my screen okay? I don't see any hands up or any comments, so I'm just going to assume that you guys are able.
It doesn't look like it. Hold on one second and let me make sure that you are the presenter again.
Oh, you know what? It is. Let's try this again.
There we go. We can see it now.
Okay, good, great. All right, so we're going to start off not in fixed assets, which I have. This is where I'm going to be navigating from today, is from my navigation pane. I actually want to come in here and talk about payables transactions, which is not that. And so I'm just going to bring up a payables transaction. Now you'll notice in this transaction, I've put a description in of projector, and my purchases amount is $650. The real magic here happens in the distributions, and you can see that I've distributed this to an account called FA Clearing. So what happens is if you distribute this to FA Clearing, it will sit there and wait for you to set it up as an asset in GP. And I'll talk about the FA Clearing account in a little more detail here as we keep going. You can have more than one fixed asset clearing account as well, and you'll see that when we start setting up our assets. So when I post this, it's going to grab that transaction and put it in that fixed asset clearing account, whichever account I've put it in, and associate this posted invoice with that particular distribution. So if you're using purchase orders, you do have the option to, and it's actually during the receiving process when it really matters here. So I'm receiving purchase order 2078, and if I expand this line, you can see I have this checkbox here called capital item. I'm still distributing it to my fixed asset clearing account, but I have the option to do some of the asset setup ahead of time. So depending on your internal process and the rules that you have, the security and permissions that you have for those individuals processing transactions through GP, you could go ahead and have that information pre-configured so that when this is posted, it will go ahead and set up more of the asset for you as you are, when you're ready to go set that up. And then the last method, of course, is the manual entry, and that's where you just put in, and in this case, we're going to ignore purchases right now. We'll just pick a class ID. Now, in GP 2015, I do have the option to have by asset class have my assets automatically numbered. I can make it company-wide as well. I have mine numbering differently by asset class. So I could go ahead and set that up. In my GP, the red fields are required, so I can just say this is some kind of equipment, and I can try to type. Now notice when I typed in the asset class, not only did it give me a new asset number, it also assigned an account group. And so I'm just going to drill back on this. This is where my general ledger accounts are going to come from. And I can override this if I want to on the asset itself, but it's going to come from that class. The accounts that are affected when you set up an asset are this asset cost account and the clearing account. Every single time you set up an asset and assign a book to it, it's going to go ahead and create an entry, a general ledger entry. You can't just come in and set up an asset and have no general ledger impact. It can't come out of nowhere. There has to be some sort of audit trail about where that the value or the acquisition cost of that asset has come from. So you can see here, if I've got this, if I'm setting it up manually, I can't do much with my acquisition cost here. I'm going to put it in as $1 or whatever. There's no drill back here. So I'm going to clear this, and we're going to pick our purchases now. So I'm just going to there's a couple of different ways to do it. I can just pick them from the drop down here. So here are 2 different items. I can also click this purchase button, and it tells me a little bit more about the items that I'm setting up here. So here's a dry erase board, here's a projector. I can simply check the box and go ahead and add those into my asset. I actually prefer to just come here. I think it's easier. Now, something you'll notice in this acquisition cost, it filled that in for me automatically. It typed in the description. Now all I have to do is add in my class ID. We'll say it's computer equipment. Set up the projector. It's added all of the information. I need to add my location information now. So I can start here. I can look at my locations. And these, I'm actually going to pick the physical location first because it'll go ahead and fill in the location ID for me. I'm going to drill back on this location ID. You should make it so that when you are when you're running reports based on location ID, maybe you can see the state county, and city code so that you can run reports that will show you, if you run it by location ID, you could get the property tax reports that you need because it is pulling the state, county, and city code. So you should know that in this case Alpharetta is Georgia, Fulton County, and then whatever city it is. Alpharetta, obviously. And then my physical location is going to be, it's typically a building or a room within a building. And notice that it relates to this location ID. So it is a building in Georgia, Fulton County, whatever city it is. There's also, you can apply an asset label here as well, and so if you are tagging your assets, you can record that here in asset maintenance. There's also an additional level of, I guess you'd call it location, called structure, and this is user defined. Typically it's used for a department, but you can see, again, you set these up. You decide what structure means to you, but typically what I've seen is it's used for a department. If you choose, you can even set up a custodian, and you can tell GP that you want to validate that, and that validates against your employee list. So you can set up employees in GP whether you're using payroll or not, and so it would validate against that employee list. And allow you to be able to keep track of assets by custodian. And then there's some additional information that you can fill in about the manufacturer and serial number, any warranty information. You can keep track of maintenance. So you can record maintenance costs if you want, and it'll show you the date added. Notice this quantity. This is important. A good example is if I'm buying chairs. Let's say I'm buying 4 chairs and it's on one invoice. I don't have to set up 4 separate assets. I can set up one asset that consists of 4 chairs. And then if one of them breaks, I can just retire one chair. So it makes it a little easier. You end up with fewer assets, but as long as you keep track of, you can track them. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do this for a serial numbered item. You'd want to do it for something that was, less trackable than a computer or something like that. You'd want it to be like chairs. So that's how you set up an asset. Again, the three different ways are, let me get there here. Manual entry, accounts payable, and through purchasing. And I want to just go over one more thing before I pause and ask for questions, and that is just to let you know that the general ledger entries are not created until the asset is assigned to the corporate book. So let's come back here. In GP, we have the ability to assign as many books as we want. And you might notice this little checkbox here that says auto add book information. So you can decide what books get auto added when you set up a new asset. And you'll also notice that I did not, it didn't have a book because I haven't saved this yet. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then we're going to go to the book. I have 3 books. You can have as many as you want. The most I've ever seen, I think, was 8. Obviously, the other books that you would set up would be tax books, and I can't remember why this particular organization had 8, but they did have 8 books. Only one of them is going to post to the general ledger, and during the setup process, you tell GP what book you want to be your corporate book that posts to the GL, and in my configuration here, it's the internal book. The book is where you define your depreciation method, and again, tax methods as well. The life on the asset is going to come from the class that you define, a combination actually of the book and the asset class. And then you know, lots of additional information that you can define for this as well. Again, no entries are created until I've assigned this to my internal book. So I've actually heard questions before, can I set up assets without having them depreciate? And the answer, of course, is yes. Just don't add the book information. Just set them up, and when you're ready to depreciate them, go ahead, or you know, when you're ready to go ahead and have them depreciate, then go ahead and set up the book. So the entries aren't created until the asset is assigned to the corporate book. So now I've got an entry sitting there. This is what the entry looks like. The source document is FAADD, so add, right? It's an addition. It's going to debit the asset cost, and so the asset cost is going to be furniture and fixtures, equipment. It's going to be the balance sheet, that asset. And the credit's going to be fixed asset clearing. So it's moving it out of fixed asset clearing and moving it into asset cost. The fixed asset clearing account should be included in your monthly reconciliations. Ideally, every month as part of your month-end process, you're going into all of your and setting up all of your new assets. And so in a perfect world, those get cleared out every month. That account is zero, but you should be including it in your reconciliation process. So with that, I'm going to pause and ask if there are any questions, Cheryl.
It looks like we do have some questions, and to remind everyone, you can either raise your hand or submit them through the question box, and I can field them to Tammy. Here's one. On all the other modules, you can choose to post through or to GL. Is FA always through?
So it depends on what version you're on, and I'm going to walk through that. It's typically always through, but GP 2015, 2013, maybe it's 2013, gives us the ability to review those transactions before they post. So I'll show you that. I'm going to take you through that process.
And I think that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay. So I'm going to take you through some of the, I see somebody with their hand up.
You're right. Edward, I'm going to go ahead and mute your line so you can ask your question directly.
Can you upload assets that are, if you're going to start from scratch, got prior assets, can I upload them?
Yes, of course. There's actually a separate asset import routine that you can use to upload your assets in, and there's a predefined file format that is documented in your user guide about the structure of that file. And our consultants have those files as well, so you can upload those.
Thanks.
Now you have to enter every single one manually. No, not true. You can import them. All right. Well, I'm just going to keep going here then, and we're going to talk about retirement. And actually all of the other kinds of transactions that exist in fixed assets. Retirements, transfers, depreciation, and then physical inventory. So we're going to go through each one of those. Let me close out my asset maintenance window here. Okay, so retirement. Just bring up our last asset here. Here's our projector. I have to, of course, record my date. Again, my required fields are set in red. So we'll do this 412. Now, the retirement type is kind of set in stone. You probably find these on your tax forms. But GP does give us the ability to add our own retirement codes. So you can actually record what happened. When an asset, is set as a casualty, maybe there's more detail, ran over by the forklift, the dog ate it, whatever it is you want to do, however you want to break those down. Now remember when I said I used the example of the chairs, and if we had 4 chairs, here's where we could retire 1. And it would actually, or a percentage, if we accidentally recorded this as 1, but it was 4 chairs, we could retire 25%. GP will book the proceeds, all the general ledger entries that happen as a result of that retirement. Obviously, it's going to come out of the asset cost for that, or the remaining asset cost for that particular item, and then it's going to be booked appropriately in the general ledger. So those are retirements. Transfers actually look similar. I can move an asset from a physical location, any of the locations, to another location and actually change the GL accounts. Obviously, if I'm tracking assets by location, maybe I've got them broken down by location, and my GL accounts reflect those locations, I would be able to make the changes to that here as well. These are auditable events, so I'm able to see, actually let me show you that here. I'm going to come up here to my inquiry, fixed assets. I can look at transfers here, so I can see what's happened, how things have moved around inside of GP. So I'm able to see all of the transfer events that have happened. Let me bring that back up here. And again, quantity and percentage. So 1 chair or 25% of 100% 4 chairs that I've done. Now new is this intercompany transfer. So if you are using GP with multiple companies, you can actually move assets from one company to another. So in this case, I'm in my company code 2, which is Fabricam Inc. I could choose to move an asset to another company and just have them create a new asset ID for the destination company, pick the asset that I want to transfer. We'll pick the projector. What's the transfer type? Maybe it's a sale. This is net book value. Again, you can do a partial. So maybe I'm going to send them 1 chair. So I could say I'm going to do 25% or 1 chair. And then you can set up what asset class, etc. So all the setups that I need to do in the destination company. So when I do a lookup here, it's going to look into Fabricam entertainment systems and tell me what asset classes they have. And then when I go ahead and transfer, it's going to go ahead and, it wouldn't because I didn't fill in my account group. It would go ahead and create that asset in my other company. Now obviously I have to have fixed assets configured in that other company in order for this to work. I have to have it, the setups have to be there, the foundation has to be laid before I can do it, but I am able to move assets around and amongst my companies. Okay, let's talk about depreciation.
We do have a quick question.
So I have some options here. Oh, sure.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you. For retirements, can you attach scan documents to the asset record?
So you could within the actual retirement itself, so in the asset, if I pull up an asset, I can do attachments just like I normally would, right? I can scan it in. It's a document attachable just like every other window. You could put it on the asset and then retire it, or you could, it looks like you can put it on this actual retirement event. Actually, no, this is on the asset. So this would show on the asset record. But yes, you can.
Can you move the assets from one company to another at original values, both cost and accum, if you are merging companies?
That I don't know the answer to. I would think that if you, well, that's probably not the way I would do it. Merging companies, if you're merging companies, then yeah, that's probably not the way I would do it. There's probably a better way to manage that than transferring the asset because if you move it to a new company, all that's moving is whatever cost you're associating with that. It's not going to move accumulated depreciation because it's a separate company. That's in your company. So I think there is a process, obviously, to merge, but doing the transfer, the intercompany transfer wouldn't be that's not a good use for the tool.
Can you transfer more than one asset at a time?
So can you transfer more than one asset at a time? You can do a group of assets. So one thing that I was just going to actually talk about this in the depreciation process, but we'll do it now. One thing that GP lets us do is create asset groups. And I have one here, and it's just groups of assets. So here's one I created called April, and we'll look at it here in just a minute. But you can create groups of assets and then move those all at once as well.
What happens to the remaining assets if you partially retire one?
Then it would just stay on your books and continue depreciating as a normal asset. So if I depreciated one chair, then the value of that one chair would come out. The net book value would continue being depreciated less that whatever the value of that one chair was.
It looks like that's all the questions we have for now, so we can continue on.
Okay, so we're gonna keep going with depreciation here. So I have the option here to depreciate all assets, or as I mentioned, you can do a group. And so what I've done here is I've set up a group. These are the assets that I set up in April. And you know, you can import this. I could create a new group if I wanted, but I'm just saying it's from. Oh, maybe I need to add another one here because I think I added a new one. And so I can add those in, and then I could pick that instead of choosing all assets. I could just pick my asset group. So you can do this, you know, as we saw in the intercompany transfers as well. There's a separate window for depreciating a single asset. So if you wanted to do a single asset, there's a window called Depreciate One Asset. There's also a projection process. It looks just like this, except it doesn't do the depreciation. So you can run projections. So, you know, at this point, maybe I'm starting to think about budgeting for next year. And so maybe if everything stays exactly the same in my fixed asset with my assets, at the end of 2016, what would my depreciation look like? And so I could project this out as far as I want to. I can also reverse a previously processed depreciation. So if you make a mistake, you can see that you've made a mistake, you can reverse that if you want to. This is important, of course. It's going to depreciate through whatever date it is. So if I'm doing my depreciation quarterly, and I said 3/31 and I hadn't done January and February, it would do January, February, March. If I'm in March and I've already done January and February, it's only going to pick up March. It's going to depreciate everything that hasn't been depreciated through that date. Now I can also have my books, identify which books I want to do. Just click all and put them all in there at once and click Depreciate, enter my target date, click Depreciate, and it'll go ahead and record the depreciation for me. It will update the assets and it will create a general ledger transaction to reflect that depreciation process. Any questions on that, Cheryl?
Let's see. No, it doesn't look like we do have any questions right now.
Okay. Yeah, depreciation is one of those things where you just kind of push the button and put the date in and off it goes. So as a result of all of these things that we've done here, so adding my asset, processing any retirements, transfers, both regular and intracompany and intercompany, and then running my depreciation or reversing my depreciation, it's going to create general ledger transactions. And what this process does is it allows me to pick a range. In this case, I've done periods, but you could do it by the type of transaction and the period if you wanted to, or by specific assets. And it shows me what my transactions are going to be. So if we come down here and look at the bottom, here is that projector that we created, that one that we just set up. And so it is crediting 1590, which is my fixed asset clearing. Here, there we go. And it's debiting computer equipment, my cost. And so here's some other ones that I set up. Now these actually had depreciation run on them already. And so it's taking 1190 into the accumulated depreciation account. So that's the reserve account, right? And it's going ahead and processing that depreciation expense as well. What this does is it allows you to review your transactions before you post them. So this is your opportunity to reverse a depreciation. Oh, I forgot to add an asset. I need to go in and do that. Here's a retirement that I forgot. You can go ahead and process that and then do your posting all at once. So this is what I was talking about, you know, being able to go ahead and review this before you post it. This is new. Post will send it to the general ledger at this point. Any questions on GL posting?
There is a hand raised. I'm going to unmute Bo's line.
Is there a way that you can get the entry before just seeing it on the screen? If you printed it and maybe had it in a batch form?
This is your batch.
Okay.
This is your batch, and you can, you know, keep in mind that you can delete this batch, and then you can see the batch ID here.
Mm-hmm.
You can delete this batch and go back and fix anything that you want before you process, or you know, you could always do more than one post to GL process as well.
Yeah, the reason I ask is my biggest issue is if I have an asset that we've now made an account number inactive on the GL side, it will not post past this point, and trying to find it going through 30 or so pages without trying to post it as per group. It can be kind of tedious to find the one general ledger number that's been made inactive.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
In prior versions, we were able to hit print and we try to come up, and it would highlight which account number was listed as being inactive at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much easier way of fixing it.
Yeah, what you might want to do is have like a smart list that you look at, you know, that shows inactive fixed asset based accounts, and try to identify those, you know, that have happened in the last month, because there's a last modified date on the account record. I'm just trying to think ahead of time to try and a way to discover what those are before you actually go through the process.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So let's talk about, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this batch. There we go. Let's talk about physical inventory. Now, the way that I am going to approach this is as if we had sent out spreadsheets to all of our departments and all of our locations and had them inventory their assets, and then I've imported those back in. And so that's the point that I'm at. Now, you can, of course, go in and, you know, do a kind of a manual count if you want. But I'm going to start here with location. Let's do 200. Now, this would show me all of the assets that were inventoried, along with a pin indicating that they have been inventoried. But what's important, I think, here is showing the missing assets. So these are all of the assets that are recorded in this location that were not inventoried. They didn't show up. So I need to figure out what's happened here. GP gives me a really good way here to create an asset group of those assets. So if I click that, it'll go ahead, I can type a group in. It will keep these in a separate asset group. We saw the asset groups when we were doing depreciation, so that I can go back and look at those later and figure out what the problem is. I can also see what's been misplaced. I don't have anything misplaced here. Let's look at a different, let's look at 100 here. Let's go one more. There we go. So I've got one asset that I've acknowledged that I have this asset. Still have a bunch missing from this location. So this is building 2. Supposed to be in building 2, not there. I've also got one that's recorded in the wrong location. This is actually in room 200. It should be in room 100. It's the wrong physical location. So if I keep going here, here it is. Asset number 11. If I look in this other location, I should see it in asset number 11, or in number 11. So it tells you what's missing and what's misplaced, what's in the wrong place. It was inventoried here, it should be here. It's in the wrong physical location. So it helps you to track down your assets. It helps you figure out where they are, where they should be, and where they are. Obviously, the missing ones might be challenging sometimes, but misplaced, it's pretty easy to identify exactly where they are, and then go ahead and you know, make a transfer or actually update the assets with the changes that you want to make. So that is the physical inventory process. There are ISV solutions that will automate that using barcodes and, you know, scanning your asset labels and things like that. So if you do have a large asset inventory, that might be something to look into. So any questions on physical inventory?
I don't see any coming through, Tammy.
Okay. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time now talking about reports, just the different kinds of reports and you know, where you can find things when you're trying to generate reports. They have them kind of broken down, and if you come into reports and fixed assets, you can see they're broken down in different categories. And so I've just saved these into my navigation pane. So within each category of report, there are a number of different reports that you can generate, and these are just normal GP reports where you can go ahead and create new options and you know, add in information that you want, determine your destination, that sort of thing. So notice you can filter this out. Date added, it might be important for an activity report, but I'll just give you an idea. You'll see some consistency in the way these reports look, but this just gives you, by asset, exactly what's happened: additions, changes, retirements, any you know, any sort of information that's happening about these assets. As well, the other one is this GL reconciliation. Let's pull that out, put that one in. So this is showing you, by general ledger account, all of the activity that's happened. And again, this can be filtered by date and you know, whatever sort of filters you need to apply to these. But you can see we've got additions, we've got transfer. This was an intercompany transfer that I did. We've got additions, depreciations, you'd see retirements, mostly depreciation, obviously, as you're running these month to month. So a lot of detail that you can find within these reports. There's also inquiry. This might be an important thing as you're trying to figure out, you know, exactly what's happened with a particular asset. You can see all of the transactions that have been generated for that asset. And I actually changed the year-to-date depreciation. I just typed it in and it created an entry. So can't do anything in fixed assets without it affecting the general ledger. And these are just sitting here because they haven't posted yet. They're in that batch. Remember, it was 04, so they're in that batch. They just haven't posted yet. Okay, another type of report are comparison reports, and these are typically going to compare book to book. So if you've got two tax books that you need to compare, federal and state, for example, if you're tracking those, you would be able to do that with these reports. And there are comparison inquiry windows as well.
Tammy, we do have one question that came through here on the last section you went over. Is there a way to export the reports to Excel?
So you can, but what you might consider doing instead is using SmartList and the SmartList Designer to be able to do that. As well, you could create, there are a few SSRS reports, SQL Server Reporting Services reports, that are fixed asset focused, but those are all exportable to Excel. So I'm just showing you the standard GP reports, but if we look, I'm just going into the financial area page here, and we can look at reporting services reports. I've got some fixed asset reports. Any SSRS reporting services generated report can be exported to Excel. If what you're looking for is not there, then it is possible that a new report could be created. So I'm just running an additions report here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Oh boy, it's a big one. Let's do 16. and 16. Sort by asset ID, maybe internal book. I just want to show you how to export this out. Hopefully we'll get something. A little bit. So on any of these, you can actually send these out to Excel. Again, if the reports that you want are not there, this is a reporting tool. New reports can be created. You can use Excel as your report writer, you know, using the GP reports. So here for each asset, got one that's retired. So this is just information, and these are individual cells here you can see, so you can do any sort of calculations that you want. And that's standard throughout GP. This isn't just fixed assets. So any SSRS report that you generate can be exported to Excel. So that's a way to answer the question with a lot of different options. Smart List, Excel reports, SSRS reports. Lots of options. So we did comparison. Depreciation reports have changed, and I'm just going to go ahead and modify my option here. What I want to show you is that you can do historical reports. So I've chosen the end of the previous fiscal year. It used to be all you could do is you know, what was current. But now we can go back in time. I could enter a date, you know, 2 years ago or whatever I want to do. Now I'm in 2017, and I've indicated that I want to see the depreciation detail as of 2016. And so if I print this report, there it is, 15 and 16. No 17. And we know that we've run January, February, and March in 17. So historical depreciation is now available in GP. I know that's been kind of a it's been something that was missing, and in the last 2 releases, 13 and 15, they really did some focusing on fixed assets and changed in pretty much all of the depreciation reports. You have the ability to change or to indicate a historical time period. So that was a pretty big deal. And as well, there are inventory reports. And so this is, you know, where's my stuff? What location is it at? What, you know, here's my location ID, how many, what's the cost basis, what's the net book value? So I could generate this by location, and it would pretty easily tell me my property tax basis for that particular location. And then if you are running projections, there are projection reports. I don't think I have any projections sitting out here. But you could run projections, obviously, and generate reports for those, both on a period summary in detail and annual summary in detail. And those are going to look similar to the depreciation reports. And then transaction reports, and these just get into the weeds here. You know, what have I added? What have I retired? What have I transferred in whatever time frame it is that I indicate. All right, I'm going to pause for questions.
None right now.
I didn't catch that, Cheryl. Can we try again?
It looks like we don't have any questions right now.
Okay. Well, if you do have a question, now's the time to ask it, because we're pretty much done.
I can go ahead and cover this slide real quick as we're closing. All of our upcoming events and promotions can be found at our website at socius1.com. We encourage you to check it out, take a look. Microsoft is offering GP 2013 and 2015 customers the extended pack for $5,000 through the end of June. There's a lot of promotions that are going to be expiring at the end of June, so encourage you to take a look at that link. And then a couple of upcoming events as well, a couple of GP user events, tips and tricks session on June 18th, and joining GP with Office 365 on July 16th. And it looks like we do have some questions come in.
Okay.
Okay, some people are asking if they can have a copy of the slides. So we'll make sure to send those out afterwards along with the recording. You still there, Tammy?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm
Can you hear
sorry.
me?
I was getting a little feedback. Yes, I can.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions we have that are coming in right now. So we can go ahead and close. Tammy's information is up on the screen right now. If you do think of any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to her directly. And we can go ahead and close. So thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.